Hello! I'm here early on a Sunday morning to give a quick tour of Makerspace, fortunately before anybody else has arrived, so we should have an empty, quiet shop to walk through. I want to first of all say that Makerspace is a BC nonprofit society, and so it's run by our members, and we have no paid staff, and so everything is done by our members. And before we walk inside on the tour, one of the things that comes out of that is that all of our garbage and stuff is done by us. And so these bins in the trailer out here are where our garbage goes. We'll talk more about that later. Parking at Makerspace, the 4 spots in front of Makerspace, the 2 in front of the green metal shed and the 2 in our loading bay, are always free. But the rest of the spots in the lot here on weekdays between 9 and 6 need to be paid for. And there's the machine at the far end of the building that you can buy your parking at. I'm going to walk up the steps to the main entrance of Makerspace here and talk a little bit about COVID. The reason you're watching this tour on video and not in person is because of COVID. It's become harder to organize group tours these days. The only way we've managed to stay open during this is by rigidly observing COVID guidelines. And our COVID response plan involves having everybody be masked up all the time when they're in there, and setting room limits are the primarily the things we do. I'm going to, before we go in, also talk about our outdoor metal shed. So this outside metal shed is where we do things that are too dusty, too fiery, too dirty to want to do inside Makerspace. We've got a couple forges over here, and we've got a bunch of folks doing knife making. We've got a couple casting furnaces. People are mostly casting bronzes and aluminum. Nobody really at higher temperatures than that right now, but good bits there. And a couple burnout ovens. I'm going to have to go fast on this tour. I see that my battery is beginning to run out. So all of our members get an access card that gives them 24/7 access to Makerspace. This is a really good thing because sometimes it's busier at 4 a.m. than it is 4 p.m. And it's great to be able to come in anytime, day or night. We've got some safety equipment by the front door here, an eye wash station, and our first aid kit. And I'm going to turn around to the right and show you around our inside metal shop. This is one of, the second, I guess, of 3 metal shops we've got in the space. See a nice drill press here we just recently got. There's a metal cutting bandsaw sitting at the back, some grinders and cutoff wheels again there at the back. And then the main thing in here are our welders. We've got a functional MIG welder and a really quite nice TIG welder. These tools need to be checked out on. Basically, tools that you can kill or tools that can kill you. You need to do a bit of a checkout first. And your card at Makerspace gets you access to the space and the equipment, but not consumables. Consumables are your responsibility. And so we have a pressure log on our gas tanks for the welders, and you're asked to basically just throw in an amount commensurate with the amount that you use. Bunch of hand tools on the wall. Some welding masks and protective equipment and stuff. It's often best to bring your own personal protective equipment. So earplugs and masks and things like that, expected to largely bring your own. But things like welding helmets, we do have some in common. Of course, if you have your own gear, it's going to be easier to fit to you. Walking up into our third metal working area, this is our machine shop. We also have some of our sheet metal tools sitting in this area. I'll pan around here and talk just a little bit about our mill. So this is a nice mill that we've done a CNC conversion project on. And the CNC functionality is still a work in progress, but some people are starting to use it. It's fully functional. It just has some quirks. As a manual mill, which is probably 80% of the use this mill is currently getting, it still works great as well. Summer project of one of the members was to build a long belt sander for knife making. You can grind off a lot of material with that. And sitting next to it is the lathe. Metal lathe is Craftex and fairly basic, but works well. And then back in that corner, another grinder and our 10-ton hydraulic press. I'm going to take you into the CNC room. This is A 2 foot by 4 foot flatbed CNC machine. Has a water-cooled spindle, mostly for wood and plastic use. It's built out of aluminum, and so although you can do machining of some aluminum on it at very, very conservative speeds and feeds, it's really best for woods and plastics. Dust collection in here. I'm going to take you on out to some of the woodworking areas. So we try and keep doors closed to keep the dust out between the woodworking and metalworking areas. We've been slowly beefing up our clamp collection. Expect some more of those soon. This area is really kind of a utility area that has turned into the woodworking glue-up room. And so after you're done making things in the wood shop, you can leave them on the benches here clamped up and glued up for up to 24 hours. But you do then have to get them out of here after that 24-hour period. I've turned off the fans, I guess, so that you can actually hear me, but usually when I'd walk into the main wood shop, the air curtains would go on. And we've got air curtains from both the glue-up area and also down at the other end back into the metal shop area, or inside metal shop, just to keep the dust from the wood shop in the wood shop. Give you a quick tour around some of the machines. Here's the woodshop drill press that's currently in a bit of repair. That's an actively ongoing repair. People are using the metal shop wood press for, or metal shop drill press rather, for wood right now, which isn't ideal, but we'll get that fixed soon. Chop saw and router table. Got some sanders on the far end. Have a nice surface sander next to it, the lunchbox planer, and our wood lathe. Jointer, table saw. This planer is still a work in progress, but nice big SCM planer once it gets up and going. And then our bandsaw is an SCM as well. Our dust collection system. It's a big improvement to have good dust collection in here. That was one of last year's projects. And next I'm going to walk you into the biolab. This is Canada's first community molecular biology lab, actually, and I had to go back and forth with Health Canada a bit to make sure they were okay with everything. It's a biosafety level 1 lab, which what that means is that it is only suitable for things that don't pose a risk to human health or environmental release. Within that category, though, there are a bunch of fun things that we do in here. Every fall, we go around to the mushroom shows and find mushrooms the experts have identified, and then use a process called DNA barcoding to genetically determine if the mushrooms have been identified correctly, or if they're a different species, or in some cases, if they're a new species, and that's always kind of fun. We also have had teams compete in a competition called iGEM, or International Genetically Engineered Machines. This is an MIT-sponsored competition where they send us a whole bunch of DNA parts, promoters, ribosome binding sites, protein coding regions, that kind of thing, and we assemble them together into new organisms. And then the goal of the competition is really to domesticate parts from the environment and put them back into the parts library. But for instance, our first entry into that competition was a bacterial thermometer. If you grow it up at room temperature, it fluoresces green. If you grow it up at 42 degrees or over, it fluoresces red. And we built that up from parts, simulated it on the computer, put them together into a bacteria, booted up the bacteria, and had our new life form. I don't know that there's a huge utility to a bacterial thermometer, but the fact that we could make that in a community lab is pretty neat. Part of our storage solution, you can rent a locker on a monthly basis, and the men's restroom, and the noisy computer rack that all our servers are sitting in. It's the women's restroom. Graphics computer currently in disassembly and repair out here. And then our green screen recording room. It's a fun place to hang out. And with a heater on in there, stays warmer than the rest of the space. Come Coming around into the other room, we've got a classroom area that's currently being set up to become a better remote teaching space so we can do more online classes. It's also where the first robotics group works out of. They're a set of high school kids that won an honorable mention at the World Championships in Houston last year. But this year with the pandemic, it's all moved to live streaming, and so they want a space that's able to be better able to support their live streams. So that's part of what we're doing. More on storage. This wall is rented by the lineal foot per month. I don't think there's any space at the moment, but eventually things will come back open. I'm going to go into the 3D printing area next. We've got a few 3D printers. The first ones are monoprice units. These are FDM, or fused deposition modeling printers. And pretty basic machine, but they're cheap and we're able to keep them working. We've got two of them, one on top, one on bottom. That one just finished a job. Our Robo 3D is a little bit hurting. I'm not sure it's ever going to fully come back to life, but we're in discussions about a new machine of some sort. And then on the bottom is our Sla printer. This is a stereolithography printer, and so it uses a photopolymer and then shines a laser in it to cure it. Just a little bit different process that's able to achieve resolutions of about 50 microns, which is kind of neat. And then our laser cutter area. We've got two laser cutters right now. The little blue one is getting a new controller head. It's in the box next to it, so that's kind of a work in progress. The big one's a continual work in progress, but is up and running great now. We've had it a few years. It was donated as a carcass, and then we filled it with new electronics and new control systems to make it shut off if the water, cooling water stops, if the air supply stops, to monitor the tube current. Basically, every time this thing breaks, we seem to add another control system to make sure that that particular break won't happen again. It's a really fun community project to build tools up that are fairly complex, but work great in this kind of environment. The laser cutter is great at cutting paper, at cutting wood, at cutting acrylic plastic, but if you cut anything with a chlorine compound in it, PVC or vinyl or something like that, you fill the space with mustard gas, which is a good battlefield poison, but a bad thing to fill the space with. This next area, we're starting to walk into electronics now. We get a lot of component donations. So for instance, the wire on the rack down here and a lot of the things in the cupboards around, you're just free to come in and use as part of your projects. We have soldering stations set up on the bench here, mostly for through-hole soldering. And then some more equipment in the rack, more soldering stations, a desoldering unit, some signal generators and oscilloscopes, test equipment, all sorts of fun stuff. On the far side, I talked about through-hole soldering. We're just in the midst of getting our surface mount line back up. We've got some new equipment for it, a solder stencil machine and a manual pick-and-place machine. When you get to surface mount components, they're so much smaller than through-hole that you really need some mechanical help to get your pieces placed on the board and soldered properly. Although they're not out on the bench yet, they're in the admin office still. We do have a reflow oven and a binocular microscope to help with all that as well. Just stepping past some tool donations have to be sorted. And into the sewing area. The sewing area here, we've got an industrial sewing machine and then next to it a 5-thread serger. And both of these work great, although the serger is a complicated beast and only a couple people really kind of have been able to make it do its thing. Have a couple of home units as well in here. And I'll talk here, while we've got a good view of it, about the other piece of our storage solution. This is a short-term storage area. And you can leave things in these racks on top of this sheet goods storage for up to a week with your name and date labeled on them. But it's really discouraged to leave things longer than that. With 150 members and as you can see in the walkthrough, very limited storage capabilities. Most of the time, things that you work on here at Makerspace have to leave Makerspace when you do, unless they need to be here for a very short amount of time. And with that, I'll walk us back past our machine room and back down the long hallway to the front door. So thanks a lot for coming along on the quick tour this morning, and hope to see you on the forums. Would encourage you to join the forums, even if you haven't made it out to become a member yet. You're very welcome on the forums, and if you post in the topic, I can only see metal, or I can only see public topics, not metal and wood, then I'm happy to add you to the member side of the forum, which will let you go from there and participate in all of our online conversations. Thanks so much.